This is an interview with Alden H. Richardson on the 5th of April, 2022, about Alden's recollection of his life as it intersected with the grassroots organizing workshop and the war in Vietnam and things that followed as much as he can remember. So, Alden,
Yes,
you grew up in Columbia, right?
yes.
And your folks and family came down here for some reason from Maine.
My father came from Maine. My mother's from Red Bank.
Okay? And that you were in high school in Columbia when you joined the Marine Corps. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How old were you?
17.
You're not supposed to join the military until you're 18. How did you do that?
You can have your parents sign for you.
And was that a discussion that you had to sell them on, or were they thought that was a good idea?
Oh no, it was a Friday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock. I was laying on a pool table taking a pool shot when I heard a voice behind me, which was my father.
Uh-oh.
And my father gave me a choice. I could go back to school or I could join the military. I said, take me to the recruiter right now. And that was a Friday afternoon. Saturday morning, I went and had a physical at Fort Jackson. And Monday morning, I got on the bus and went to Paris Island.
Wow. That's quicker than they built a Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, pretty
Um,
much. Yep.
so it wasn't exactly your patriotism that drove you to the military. Not questioning your patriotism, sir, but it was your father. And so, what year was that? What year did? And you went into the Green Machine, into the.
January of 65.
That was early in the game. That was before the Gulf of Tonkin.
No, I think the paper had been written.
That was, and the draft was activated then.
Well, the Gulf of Tonkin isn't but about the paper written, but about two paragraphs. I guess you've read it a few times.
Yeah, and it was a kind of a tripwire in terms of timing when we started, the, sending the boys in, and it changed from mag to different stuff when we were just advisors helping the French. But so 60. So you went through Paris Island. What years were you at PI?
January, February, March, and April of 65.
Well, that I was living on the base when you were there. I think we've had this discussion. I would have been at 65, a junior in Beaufort High School. Very spoiled, rotten bourgeois kid, was probably driving a convertible. Daddy was a commander, loading lots of shotgun shells at the God and Run Club. Oh, it was the Rod and Gun Club, but it came out the God and Run Club most of the time. And I understand you were shooting skeet at the same time. It's surprising that it took that long to meet you.
Yeah, I was shot with Colonel Cool. He was,
Frosty Cool. I've never heard
yeah,
of him.
Frosty.
Yeah, that's wow. What a small world. Oh. And I blew my hearing out. I attribute losing my hearing to 200 rounds of 12 gauge ammunition on a Saturday by Marines that taught me that hearing protection was for sissies.
Mm. I fired 200 rounds a day of 12 gauge.
It, you were good, I take it. I was never quite very good.
I shot for three Marine Corps teams.
Wow. Well, that got you out of, out of swabbing latrines, I guess. Sometimes, I mean, that being able to do
I
some.
don't know. I really don't know.
So anyway, you apparently graduated as a what, PFC?
No, I'd be left. I came out Lance Corporal.
But when you went in, I mean, you came out of what, PI as a Lance Corporal?
No, 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 no. That would have been a private.
Right, private. So PFC is a rank up from private, yeah?
That's E2.
Okay,
Private is E1,
E1,
E
E1.
PFC E2, and then Lance Corporal, Corporal. Buck
It,
Sergeant.
did you ever go to the dental office when you
Every
went?
Marine goes in there for one initial checkup. Mhm. I have no idea what they did. I don't think they did any work on me at all, but
You probably didn't see my father, who was there.
mm, wouldn't have any idea who he was.
Well, he probably wasn't seeing the recruits anyway. Who was in charge of the dental office? But so let's fast forward a little bit. How long did it take you to get to Vietnam?
I think I was, my first day in Vietnam was April the 1st, 1967.
April Fools, 67. Were you aware of the anti-war activities in America then?
No,
So you spent how long? How many months were you on the ground in Vietnam?
13.
So came back May of '68,
Uh-huh.
and you came back to a protesting country.
I came back to a situation which I simply couldn't understand.
When did you? What, I'm anticipating at some point you became what we would call an anti-war GI. I mean, I think
Yes.
most GIs would be anti-war given the option. But understanding as to why you're an anti-war GI, when did you start thinking that way? Because that's really interesting for me because we're talking
Well, it's not that
historically.
it's not that I'm anti-conflict. There's time for conflict.
That's not the
But
question.
in this particular case, it became pretty obvious that the folks that we were going to fight for was exactly what they wanted. They wanted us to fight for them. They didn't want to fight at all.
The
And it,
South Vietnamese army.
yeah, and if you really realize what was going on, you're talking about Catholics and Buddhists. A lot of things people don't seem to understand, but that was a breakdown as well. And you can't put a country together when everybody's going in different directions.
You can't win somebody else's civil war.
Nope, you can't do it.
Nope,
Nope.
nope. So you came back to, I mean, in May of '68, I'm already raising hell protesting the war in Vietnam and Colombia. You came back to that. What was your first awareness that there were people in your own hometown that were protesting about the war? Did anybody ever spit on you and call you a baby killer? I've never heard of it
Oh yeah, I
happening.
got all that. I got all that at the airport. When we came in from Nam, they wouldn't let us get out at the terminal. They flew us down to the end of the runway. I mean, there's an entire company of Marines in those airplanes.
What state are you in? California?
That would have been LAX that I flew
Uh,
into.
uh, uh.
They took us over to El Toro, put us on a bus, and took us to El Toro. The last thing they wanted was a company of Marines dealing with some loudmouth punks that didn't know what the fuck they were talking about, and we would have killed them. At any rate, they took us to El Toro and broke us up into groups and took us back to LAX. Some of us were alone for a while. Some of us were just twos and threes. That was an interesting scenario. I had no idea what was wrong. I left a hero and came back a bum.
Hmm. Hmm. And so you then got the next flight out to probably Atlanta.
Say again? Oh
You
yeah,
got the
but I had flown. I flew from. They took me back to LAX, and I flew to Atlanta, which was fantastic. It was a red eye, and I had kind of huge ass knives and a machete hanging all over me. Nobody said a word, and the ladies.
were you in uniform?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and
Go back to the part where you said the spitting and the protesting. I never heard of that actually happening. It actually happened to you that there were protesters that were spitting on you or calling you a baby killer because
yeah,
the stuff that I grew up around and the way we organized was that you were a victim of this, and that you weren't the problem, and it was really counterproductive to do that. And so there's a whole body of arguments in books saying it didn't happen and it did, but it happened to you.
it happened to me.
Okay. On the ground in the airport in LAX.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. That's probably another discussion I'd like to get into, but we've got that point pinned now because you, the first person I've ever known that actually had it happen to them. Of course, haven't had that many people I talked with when their boots hit the ground back and stateside. So then you were in Atlanta, and then you came back. You flew to Columbia,
Yeah.
and there was no protesters in Columbia. I don't.
No, there was nobody in the airport. No. Back then, the airport was real small.
They all were. The
Yeah.
Hartsfield was.
Uh,
They were. Was that a propeller plane, bro?
no, I flew jets except for some of
From
the.
Columbia to Atlanta was probably a
Oh yeah,
propeller.
that was jet. Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
Mm. And then you did you go to work with your dad right off? What happened then?
No, I went to work for Lexington County Survey Crew. I surveyed for
Uh,
a number of months, possibly a year. Built a number of the roads over there in Irmo and the interstate from Malfunction Junction to the First Edisto River.
so we have that to blame on you also, as well.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
can blame
I
that on
know
me. Look, I was just following the plans and driving stakes in the ground. Okay,
it's front office problem, right?
so that's it. The front office. Yeah.
So
Uh,
okay, a year in the swamp, fighting snakes and putting snakes in the ground for the concrete. Then what?
Went to work at a place that made interstate pipe, huge sections of concrete pipe, or big centrifugal units. And the bottom line on all of that was I was beginning to feel as though I wasn't getting things done that I wanted to get done. That was just work to feed myself. And so the first thing I did was I went and became the scoutmaster at the Boy Scout troop that I had been a kid at. And I did that for 4.5 years. And then I went to work at the Scout office for 2.5 years at the Explorer
You were
program.
paid for that?
No, it's all volunteer work.
Okay.
I went to work with Judge Spagner and Judge Bower with the family court, worked with 3 young men through there in the Big Brother program, and realized I still wasn't doing what I wanted to do. And some young man walked into my business one day and left a pamphlet, which I read, which turned me on to environmental issues. And that's when I got involved with Grow.
What year
Um,
now? What year are we at now? That's 10 years
oh,
later.
what do you figure?
77, 78.
My probably mid 70s, probably something
Okay.
like that. I don't remember.
Well, put a
Uh,
pin in that when I go back to 1968 when you came home. That was the year that the stuff really cooked up in Colombia because of the
well,
anti-war
there
movement.
was a doctor by the name of Levy,
That was
who,
he was convicted in '67, and then the coffee house started in '68, the UFO Coffee House,
hmm
and that's what and the G, anti it was called um, GIs Against War in Vietnam that started at Fort Jackson in May of '68, the same month you came home. Did you know that was happening then?
no,
Okay,
no, I was too busy uh, getting a job, getting settled down, getting my life back together.
I
When
understand.
when you're gone, when you leave when you're 17, you haven't got very much together, and so when you come back, there's nothing there.
I
So
understand.
I had to start from zero, getting it back together. I didn't have time for some of these other things, but I made time to do those few things I mentioned because
Would
I felt it was very important to do
did
something
you
for
go
my
to the
country.
did you ever go to the UFO Coffee House?
I have one very fine poster from the UFO Coffee House. I knew a number of the band members that played in uh, Speed Limit 65,
Uh-huh.
35. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, 30. It
yeah.
was only
It
35.
was
I remember
35.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That
95.
was the
Okay.
sign you saw everywhere. Yeah. And yeah, I spent a good bit of time down there. We enjoyed harassing the idiots that lived next door to us down there. And of course, that was right across the street from City Hall.
What were you becoming what we would consider an anti-war GI by then when you were there, or were you? What was your
Oh no,
stance?
I was at no 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 no
I'm
no
trying to
no.
pin your anti-war down.
That probably happened about 3 weeks after I got in Vietnam.
Okay, well, it wasn't when you were on the pool table and Daddy walked in.
No, no, I just wanted to be a
Oh,
Marine. No, I wanted to
okay.
be a Marine.
Sounds noble.
Yeah.
The wrong war.
Raw war, raw war. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
hit me later, Dad. So so anyway, you realized when you're on the ground that this was like a really bad idea. I mean,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah,
I could tell that there wasn't.
we were propping up somebody. This bullshit, and so that was
Well,
real clear.
that
We
was
did that
basically
early.
it. That was
Yeah.
we were propping up Buddhists in a Catholic country, or was it the other way
Well,
around?
no, it doesn't really matter because
Mm.
Catholics was something we imported, the French imported, and so it's a very long history. It's very tortured. We shouldn't have been there to begin with. So we agree that it was a bad idea for
Oh
you.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Mm.
So we're now up to 19 mid 70s when you just getting involved in the environmental stuff. So what was the first environmental issue that brought you
Well, the first thing that
involved?
happened was a gentleman came into my business and left a pamphlet, and I read it, and it had to do with environmental issues, and I became intrigued that these were things I had not heard before, and there was a phone number, so I called the phone number, and you'll never guess who I got on the phone.
Either me or Merle.
Oh, Michael Lau,
Ah, okay.
and he was still working down at Grow at the time.
Yeah,
Palmetto Alliance hadn't been formed apparently,
yeah.
and he said, everybody's welcome. Come on down. And I believe I talked with you after that about security, and you said I would have to come to some meetings to figure out what it was that you guys considered security.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first meeting was down at King Park. Wouldn't call it King Park now. It was still called Valley Park.
Valley Park.
Hmm. And we went down and did Barnwell One.
That was
Uh,
77, I think.
that
Hold,
that that
hold
that
on.
was very.
Well, we'll figure out. I can't remember when these things happened, but it was 77.
Oh, been a lot of stuff over a long period of time, Brett. It's hard to
But that
pin down here.
that's when you got involved, was when we were gearing up to do one of the big actions, and you were going to help us.
Yeah, I had to come in and talk with you to make sure I wasn't a ringer.
Well,
And
also you understand that we're like you were the Harmony Corps.
yes,
You don't beat people up right from jump. You give them a chance.
no, there. Well, you don't beat up people at all.
All right, you
Is
got
the
it. You
rule.
passed the
Right,
audition.
right, right. Just
And
because
so
you can do it.
you went to that Barnwell event that Jackson Brown played at.
Yeah, and
And you weren't there when he played, were you? You
I
better
don't think
answer.
so.
You better
I
answer the
don't think
question
so.
because you were mad at
Yeah.
me for 20 years because you didn't know Jackson was going to play.
Yeah, well, I'm probably still mad at you.
But so that you went and you did your security thing. You had a little T-shirt and did that. What were your
Oh,
fees?
that was set Barnwell too. You had me set up the ComNet, where we had communications between the different, ooh, ding dong. We had communications between the different groups as they were spread around, and as we marched down to the three different facilities we were protesting that day. We kept in contact with each other. Just there were CB radios with gel pack batteries. They weren't anything fancy, but that was the first action. After that, we've done quite a bit.
Did you get arrested at any of that?
Yes,
At Barnwell one or two or both? I don't remember.
Barnwell two. I got arrested and refused bond, and this is probably an interesting story. I went into the jail there, refusing bail, and the jailers were some of the most friendly people I've ever met. They even let us out of the jail out into the parking lot so that some of the guys could smoke a cigarette. And they were telling us stories about a lot of people in town that worked out at Kim Nuke were breaking open the boxes and stealing the tools.
Right,
You
that's
have to
what they're
remember
doing.
that they would use the tools for 2 or 3 turns and then have to throw them away because they were radioactive. And the same thing with 2x4s and plywood. I had a story where one fellow stole enough plywood from the boxes and the 2x4s that the bad stuff was stored in that he took in his carport and made a room. I guess it glowed in the dark.
Didn't need lights.
I don't know. That was quite a couple of nights there. I got out and came back. I was supposed to stay there 3 days, but I had a meeting with the number one man down at DHEC as far as the nuclear stuff was concerned.
Now, was that the time that the arrest, you could book your weekend in jail and you got to pick when you wanted to go?
I think so. I think so. That was the
That's very accommodating.
first time I heard somebody try and pronounce Orkia.
Oh,
A judge by the name of Flowers, who eventually had a heart attack the next day.
oh dear.
You remember him, don't you? Judge Flowers. He didn't make it through the hearing. There was three magistrates trying to get us, to plead guilty and leave, and nobody was leaving. Everybody was going to jail. Um, well, it's what you'd call what do you call these things that
Bail
kids do now?
solidarity.
Well, whatever it was, we did it, and they put us in barbed wire for a while. It was quite an interesting affair. Yeah.
Jail, no bail, nearly 300 people.
Mhm.
Well, do you feel that had a positive effect on America's nuclear policy?
For a while, I thought it did.
Mhm.
I don't know now. They're having so much trouble with energy. Actually, it's not that bad if you would just take a real deep dive into geo. You know, the Earth is hot. All you got to do is make steam. That's all a reactor is a steam machine. You can do this and pump the water right back down in the ground. There's no reason for these capitalist oil companies to take our oil, buy it or lease it from us, and then sell it back to us at world prices. This is outrageous.
It
But
is indeed. But the reason that they use the nuclear is that it costs them more, and then they get to pass it on at 10% or plus.
well, I think the real money there is not in making the reactor, not in making the power, but in building the reactor.
Well, and
Uh,
also billing the all the utility. We don't need to get into this, but the utility public service commission sets the rate at cost plus.
Plus, that's
It's
it.
the plus part that's the
That's
problem.
it. That's it. That's the part I think that's why they were building the things
Well,
anyway.
yeah, hell, I
Uh,
mean,
uh,
get the stuff from the sun. It's free. You can't charge a whole lot for that.
well, there's a few other ways. Like I was saying, I do believe that geothermal is probably the way to go.
That's a good
Uh,
way. That's a good way. So we could hook up something to the state house and get the gas coming out of that and probably
oh, well, if we did that, we
cut
would
down
never
all
need
the
it. We
gas
we
bills.
wouldn't have to do anything else ever. No,
So there were any number of events and over the years that we were growing. We were there 22 years that you helped do security. Is there any things that stand out in your mind that made you feel good about what we were doing? A good example or a bad example to go
oh,
with?
I thought that. Okay, I'll give you probably one of the very best examples. Now, it's not security because I thought we did an excellent job of that. I don't believe we ever had any problems in regard to security. Do you? I
No,
don't
that's
remember
what
any.
we did a good
Yeah.
job.
Uh, the one thing about Grow that was really different and really made it work was what you did was you gave somebody a space, a phone, and the opportunity to do their thing. And this was everybody doing whatever they wanted to do, which meant you were doing four or five different things at a time, which gave you the ability to work together and pull different things together. And I thought it was probably one of the most successful, if you want to call it a business or whatever, a technique that I had ever seen.
Hmm.
Uh, and I believe that's why a lot of things got done was because the ideas floated very freely back and forth between people.
Well, that's a delightful, delightful observation. Um, yeah, that's basically good organizing, is what it amounts to. And
Yeah, well, you
so,
don't find a lot of
no, you don't.
that.
South Carolina, there's just been this sense that we can't get anything done, so don't try, and the smart people leave. and they leave us to do the best we can, which is what Majestica called making a way out of no way.
You ain't getting out of here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing, Brett, because I think that is really, really, really important. And, you know, it's painful to say this, but I believe that if the government really wanted to do something about the racial situation in the country, it would. I don't believe it does.
Oh, you're precisely correct. That's what keeps them in power. If the peasants, that's us, weren't fighting against each other, we might organize and figure out what our problem is. And so
Yeah, they
hoping
would. They,
I'm hoping we're moving in that direction. They're running out of things to blame problems on. I mean, it was like the black people for like 400 years, and then there's the gay people, and then there's the Mexican people, and now it's like
oh, it's always
school
going to
teachers.
be
It's the school
somebody.
teachers now. It's the school teachers.
How can anybody hassle school teachers?
Well, because they're
Uh,
teaching children to be uncomfortable,
my wife was a school teacher for 40 years,
and she loved her
and
children and did a good job.
she did her absolute best. There was no politics. How do you have politics with a 5, 6, or 7 year old? They
You
don't know
don't.
what you're talking
No,
about.
you don't.
This critical race theory stuff is for high, graduate level students in college. It's got nothing to do with any of the elementary schools anywhere in the country.
Uh-huh.
I don't understand. No.
It's the same old thing that they have to keep changing. When Lee Atwater was Reagan's advisor, Lee had studied under Harry Dent. Harry Dent was Nixon's advisor.
Boy, if you just didn't lay out a whole bunch of bad guys.
And Dent came up with a Southern strategy, which was law and order. It's like it can't just be anti-black now because that's like against the law. But we can be for law and order. That was Nixon's deal. And then when Reagan came along, we have a recording of Atwater interview that the Nation did, and we play it in our Majeska school, where he's talking about his strategy for Reagan is you can't just say nigger, nigger, nigger anymore and win elections. You need to use economic theory, and so that's when Reagan came up with the fact that the poor people were drawn, they were faking being poor, they were lazy, so it was the welfare queens type of thing. But that changing of the way that you identify the other, the people you blame things on, this is where we are now. Is that the right wing and the people that are the greed heads? They're running out of things to blame it on, and it's. I hope we're going to see some people waking up to that.
Oh, I've still tried to what this phrase woke, which I only recently understood.
Oh, you
I
do
had
tell me about it. I don't understand it.
well, I think that means that you and I are supposed to all of a sudden have noticed that things are screwed up.
What? Yep.
It's a little late on that, aren't they?
It is amazing, Alden. Amazing. It's amazing. And the newly woke, their way of resisting is simply by raising hell. There's no plan if you just like attack your allies or the people you can get closest to.
Well, that makes it
Then you
even
make yourself
easier for them to come back at you.
all you're trying to do is make yourself feel good because you can't win anything. So you just like let's feel good. But now
Gee, that almost sounds like Putin, doesn't it?
yeah. But back on track because we're editorializing here.
Well,
Um, so talk about your barbershop days. There was an ad that we keep running across in our grow work that Richard Lane did for your barbershop with somebody in an electric chair. Wouldn't trust my last haircut to anybody but El Centro.
oh, I.
You don't have that copy?
Richard Lane had some pretty hard hair to cut, if you remember. That
You need.
wasn't exactly an easy thing to do.
I will make you a print of that. You need that. But
Richard had happened to be just a remarkable man.
yeah,
It's too bad we lost him so early.
with I mean, you retained him to be your commercial artist there for El Centro? And El Centro was a barbershop that your father was running and you joined him, or was that
Yeah, he started that about a year before I got out of the military.
He was out on Park Lane and then moved to there before you got out.
No, no, no. We started downtown on Blanding Street.
Okay.
We were waiting for Jefferson Square to finish being built, and then they were 2 years behind. They got through, and I operated out of that facility for another 16 years
Mhm.
before Dad went and opened another salon and left me managing the one downtown.
That's when he moved to Park Lane.
Hmm.
Okay.
He left me downtown with all those politicians and lawyers.
Well, they got the money to pay for haircuts.
They do.
Do you remember a young guy named Merle Truesdale?
My brother Merle never met anybody like him, and I don't think I ever will.
No, I don't think so.
Mm. As a matter of fact, I sent you something from Uncle Merle today.
You sent it to me.
Yeah, by way of
Oh, Daniel,
Mr.
by way of Daniel.
Daniel.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's still a bunch of stuff that Merle made Xeroxes of everything, and I never
If
got
you
the.
had any idea how I went through his stuff, I mean, you don't have a clue. I don't think so because
No,
I
I
don't.
do. I do. I was there
Uh,
in and out watching you do all that stuff, and I applaud your effort and Michael's effort in doing all that.
well, I did all the
You
paperwork.
did
I had
great.
to read everything in that place, and believe you me, you are correct. He made copies of it, multiple copies of everything,
Yeah.
which was good. We were able to get a lot of it saved and was very carefully set aside for you to come by and pick up.
And what's your best story about Merle? Becky, what's the best story? What?
Well, my best story about Uncle Merle is no doubt a backpacking trip. Even though we've had many, many wonderful times together, I mean,
Well, let's
oh
point
boy.
out that Merle wasn't exactly an athlete. Now, proceed with your story.
Merle, he wanted to go for a hike with me, and I had picked a nice one out between the Natahala and Smoky Mountain Park. And when he brought his boots and his pack out to me, I had to put his boots in the oven and beat them with a hammer so they were soft enough to where he could wear them and sew his pack together. And then we got out into some really heavy, it's called the Yellow Mountain Range. And that poor boy was probably in the worst shape of any man I'd ever met in my life. And I walked his ass to death. And I didn't mean to. I'd get ahead of him and stop and make a pot of coffee. And when he'd catch up, I'd fill up with coffee and then we'd go a little further. And finally, I think we got in 84 miles.
Wow.
When your sister came and picked us up, and at the Natahala Center is where we came
Uh-huh.
out at. The trail crosses right there at the center, and we went back to your father's house and had a couple of days of trying to catch up. But Merle, I tell you what, that boy's tough as nails. He might it, it's it he'll get to the point where he can hardly stand up and hardly see. And you just give him a minute or two, and he'll get back up and go right back at it. I was really impressed.
Mm.
But then again, I had a shovel. I could have buried him along the side of the trail.
He had a tough road to hoe, and he made it hard on himself. He was
Uh,
his own worst enemy.
he really did, and but at the same time, he probably had the best heart of anybody that I know.
It's true. It's true. It's true. He went down slow. It was so painful.
That's horrible.
I
Yeah,
know
it's
you spent
horrible.
some time with him then. Mm.
But once again, nobody lasts forever, and he had a. I think Merle had a hell of a good life. I think he did an awful lot of stuff that he wanted to do.
Well, he found a home at Grow. There's no doubt about it, and it fit in with his peculiarities. And he was able to be kind of like a hero in his own land, in his own town.
Everybody liked him. I never met a soul that didn't like him.
Yeah. He had a bad attitude about me because I was like the father figure and the boss got my foot up his ass and stuff like that. But
Well, Brett, you can be a pain sometimes. Huh?
I
I
don't
mean,
mind.
I work at it real hard. I get
So, well, any other memories about the Grow Cafe? No, we haven't talked about the cafe.
Oh, the cafe was absolutely it was precisely my cup of tea. Um, the cafe itself, with love burgers and cream sodas and things like that. I really enjoyed the food and the company downstairs. And then after you got through having a good time downstairs, you could go upstairs and get involved in something. Somebody always needed a hand doing something, and then you could go back downstairs and have a beer,
Yeah.
or you could just go in and just shoot the breeze and brainstorm. There was there was quite a few nice meetings in the grow that were very enlightening. I forget the fella you brought in that I have trouble with, but he can't remember his name now. With the government.
With the
At any
gov,
rate, well,
GI.
I got there and everything was kind of ending up. I had some scheduling foul up, and this is one of the news guys. You see him on the news. You used to see him on the news. He was somebody that had an attitude about things, and he was just wrong about a few things, and he couldn't understand it. And I'm telling him about things that I actually saw, and he's telling me about things that he heard,
Uh,
and that
you could be
doesn't
talking
work.
about any number of fools that I have run across. I don't know which one.
It's kind of aggravating, but the bottom line was that there was so much information shared at
Mm,
Grow
mm.
that it was better than a good liberal newspaper. What can I say?
Wow, wow. And the point. Speaking of good liberal newspapers,
there you go. Even finally got a paper,
11 years,
and so
and
the whole deal.
that's when we hooked Becky Robbins and drug her into the thing.
This is the whole affair was a great exchange of ideas. There were so many different people with different ways of looking at things that when you got it all together and came to as close as you could to consensus, well, what can I say? It just was the right thing. It was the way it was supposed to work.
That's
And
delightful. That's delightful. That may be a good place to stop. All I don't think we can top that.
okay,
Well, what?
if that's all you need.
Well, I'm going to let Becky listen to this and probably have some more questions. But yeah, let's do that. Let's stop there because we're now we've run up to pretty much the end of Grow, and you haven't been physically involved with the network because it's been fairly nebulous since we left the Grow building because we didn't have a home. And we're closing in on having a home, but it's not going to be quite what it was. Uh, that's not to say this is all it's going to be, but what we have now is something that's just going to be more for the school and a community center sort of thing.
The young man you're sitting out here today was a very nice fellow. If that's the quality of people you're getting, then I would suggest that you'll leave a very successful situation.
Yeah, we've got some good people, and hard times and good people. Well, listen, my brother, it is a delight to be able to get you on a videotape. But yeah, we'll come back and follow up with questions, and I hope to see you soon.